I was hungry, very hungry. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? You know, I've tried a couple of things. I've been fired from almost every job I've ever had. And this was kind of a do-or-die situation. And I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and don't ask me why, because everybody I thought who was successful read the Wall Street Journal. I didn't know what I was looking for. And I came across an ad for a shopping center in Phoenix, Arizona for $10 million. And I don't know what possessed me, but I took it home, clipped it out, pasted it on the back of a penny postcard, and sent it to the address and said, you know, send me a setup. I am a principal. And lo and behold, they answered the ad.
Oh my gosh, and what did you do when they answered the ad?
You
didn't know anything about shopping.
No, I didn't know anything about shopping center. I'd spent about 6 months working in a real estate office a number of years earlier, and I really didn't know anything. I was a gopher. And so I thought, well, these guys are coming over to see me, so I called a friend of mine who had a beautiful office up in Beverly Hills, and I told him what the story was, and I said, could I borrow your office for a few minutes? And he laughed and said, sure. It was a gorgeous office. And I walked in there a few minutes earlier, took the picture of his wife off the wall, and entertained these two guys who turned out to be from the Dell Web Company. And I had my Levi's and my sweater on, and they thought I was just some eccentric, nutty millionaire. They had the first two right. The millionaire they had wrong.
Now, how did you raise money for them?
I probably, Perry, it was the hardest thing I ever did in my whole life. I just knew that I had to do something. And I spent the next 6 months really 24/7. This is no joke. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Calling everybody I ever met, meeting with anybody I ever knew. I called, I ran, I did everything I could possibly do, and I'd pick up a few thousand here and then a few thousand there. And slowly but surely over that period of time, I was able to get enough for the down payment, which was very substantial in those days. And somehow I got enough money to close the deal.
And that was Christown.
And that was Christown.
And you still have Christown?
Actually, we still have it. It's now in the 40th year.
That's amazing. And you also wrote a couple books. One of the books that I read was just fascinating, The 10 Commandments of Making It on Your Own. And you said that studies show that those who can accomplish what they dreamed about when they were kids are the happiest, most successful adults. Are you doing what you dreamed about as a kid?
No. Well, yes and no. When I was a kid, my dream, and I've asked this a lot of people, what was your dream? You know, some guys say, well, I wanted to be an Olympic champion. Another guy said, well, I want to be a pilot or something. When I was a kid, I wanted to be rich. I mean, I just wanted to be rich. I didn't know why or how or what, but I just wanted to be rich. Then I had to figure out in the last 30 or 40 years how to get there. So, and I think people who do live their childhood dreams are the happiest of all.
Exactly. And what do you think has attributed to some of your success? And you said listening to your gut, listening to your stomach.
Well, I think one of the most important things is eventually you have to listen to your stomach, on whether it's personal matters, family matters, business matters, because your stomach never lies. If you listen to it, and it doesn't take much to listen to it, it never lies. And if you go with your gut, on almost every instance, you're going to be right.
Well, give me an example of your biggest impact. I heard that, yeah. Take some water, Sam.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, you're great. It's coming. I heard some chuckles over here at the during the first part, so that was good. There was another part where you were talking a little bit, but it didn't seem like it that loud.
Yeah, I would have stopped it.
Okay.
But I'm still rolling. Since we had started that question.
Okay. I'm just going to take it away. Okay, so Sam, give me an example of a deal that went sour because you didn't listen to your gut.
Well, the deal that went sour, one of the deals that went sour when I didn't listen to my gut is about 20 years ago I had a partnership with a fellow by the name of Steven Spielberg, who was just an up-and-coming young director. And he and I got together and started talking about forming this merchandising company to make toys and all the goodies that go along with movies, which is, of course, now a monstrously big business. And when we first started, it was very, very difficult, and I didn't really know what I was doing then either. And we did okay, but I had a lot of problems with the studio people and all of the show business types, and frankly, I was just really happy to get out of it. And we had a very amicable parting after about a year and a half. But my stomach told me that this was a mistake, because this was one of the brightest, young, nicest guys I'd ever met, and this idea was the right idea. We're just a little early, but it was the right idea. I can tell you how wrong I was, because once we made our parting, the very next movie Stephen made was a thing called E.T., which was, and probably still is, the biggest merchandising movie ever in history. I mean, the number he made from that merchandising-wise is mind-boggling. But I didn't listen to my gut.
And what was the most successful?
Clearly, the one that I knew I was dead right on in my stomach was the Arizona Biltmore Hotel. We'd tracked that for 10 years. We'd looked at it. People thought I was crazy. It was in bankruptcy. It was in disrepair. But I had built everything around it, and I had developed a lot of properties around the Arizona Biltmore, and I'd looked at it for many, many years. I knew in my gut it was the right thing to do. It was the right piece of real estate. By then, I'd had a little background and experience. And it was an extremely difficult deal, and people thought I was absolutely crazy. Turned out to be the biggest home run we've ever made.
Now, you also, from that deal, you came up with a new concept, relatively new in the hotel business, which, by the way, you've never been in the hotel business.
No, we built a couple of hotels for others, but we never operated a hotel. So we kind of did that from scratch because we thought we knew what we were doing, and it turned out we did. And I came up with this villa concept, which is, I won't go into it now. It's now been copied almost everywhere in the country, which we're very proud of. And it was a technique of building. Basically, it's a lot more complicated, but the simple answer is you build basically condominium units, you sell them, then they put them back in the rental pool of the hotel. They become hotel properties and hotel rooms. And that was a monstrous success. So it worked out pretty well. Well, I'm not sure how I got over it, Perry. All I knew is that, when you're hungry, you'll do most anything. But I always had the feeling that all of these things, which seem so mystical and so magical, politicians and businessmen and electronics engineers and so on, somebody's got to do it. And why shouldn't it be you? In other words, instead of, why, it should be why not? Why not me? So I've always kind of taken that attitude. Somebody's got to throw the touchdown pass in the Rose Bowl. Somebody's got to be the United States Senator or whatever. So why not me? And that mindset is just something I've sort of put into my head and kept going with. So whether it was a hotel or any other projects, like the business with Stephen that I had no experience in, I thought, this can't be all that difficult. Somebody's doing it. I guess I can do it too. Yes, I did.
Now, what took you into politics?
Well, I've always been interested in politics, and people always ask me, what kind of experience did you have running for the United States Senate cold turkey? And I always say, well, I was student body president of Beverly High. That and a couple of bucks will get you a cup of coffee. But I was always interested in politics. I thought there was an opportunity. It was fascinating. It was kind of interesting. I saw a chance of maybe jumping right into the Senate race, and maybe even, a little doing something worthwhile for the country or for people. And it had no connection with my business. I just decided to do it. Didn't work out, but it was close. I learned so much from that experience. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. Perry, it was a fabulous experience. The single most important thing I learned was the folks out there, in civilian land, if you will, just the ordinary guys who go to work every day, they are so much smarter than people give them credit for. It's amazing how smart they are. And it was a real eye-opener to go around the state in those days and meet people and campaign and be interviewed and talk. And it was a remarkable experience. And the ability of individuals, especially in this country, to think and to speak and to understand is so much greater than anybody believes. That's the main thing I learned.
I'm sorry,
Yeah. You lost it?
You know what I've got to do? Sam, what did you learn coming out of running?
I think, Perry, the single biggest thing I learned is how intelligent people are out there. It's amazing how smart folks that you don't give credit to. And they're just a wealth of good, smart people out there that politicians really don't get most of the time. And that was a huge understanding for me.
Did you have any aspirations of going back into politics?
No, I I think that was a long time ago, and I've kind of done that.
Well, the nature of it all seems like it's changed.
It's changed a great deal. The basic underlying situation is the same, but today you have a situation where money is everything. It's all about money. And politics from 1970 to now, it was tough then, but now it's become a blood sport. Go after the other guy, kill the other guy, attack the other guy, do whatever you can to win. And it's really become a blood sport. And it's too bad because it keeps a lot of great people from getting involved.
It seems also what I've learned about you is that you have absolutely no fear in really facing your fears if you even have any. You said that that was probably one of the biggest inhibitors to success.
I think that probably the biggest inhibitor to anybody's success is fear. They're afraid they can't do it. They're afraid of what other people might say. That's huge. And I was never afraid what other people would say. And I had no time for fear, Perry. I was desperate and I was hungry. So you just kind of go for it, and you just kind of suck it up and let the adrenaline flow, and you don't have time for fear. You just got to do it. And people have a great difficulty overcoming that.
Well, also your book, you have your golden rules, and there's so many fabulous ones. You talked about one already, Why Not Me? The other one that really struck me is that you don't have a fear to ask for help.
No, I think it's extremely important. I did early on, and it's one of the things I wanted to put in the book many years ago, is don't be afraid to ask for help. People are always willing to help you. And the more successful someone is, the more he's willing to help. That's what I found. And I was always afraid at the beginning to ask for help because I didn't want to sound like I didn't know and I was a little concerned. Don't ever be afraid to ask anybody for help, especially someone who's more experienced and someone you like, because they'll always come through for you.
Sam, you talked about taking time to imagine, to think, to form images. How do you let your imagination run wild? And how much time do you spend daydreaming?
Well, I do it all the time. And now that I think back, of course, you raised this question, Perry, I've been doing this, I think, since high school. I'd always dreamt, I always had visualized, I always thought about these kind of things, I suppose unconsciously. But I'll tell you one thing, every great athlete, every great important person in the world, they always visualize where they're going, what they're going to do. I mean, every athlete I've ever known, he visualizes the night before running and winning the race, throwing the touchdown pass in the Rose Bowl, or being elected to the Senate. They visualize it, and they see it. And you know something? I don't know much about psychology, but it's just something I've always done. And it's a good habit to try and get into, is dream. Dream big and visualize.
Getting into more of your personal life, I was surprised earlier on in your career that you were in entertainment.
You know, we can disconnect that phone. You know what you do? You know.
I was surprised to learn that earlier on that you were in the entertainment business. Television shows, you were hosting game shows, and what happened and why didn't you continue?
Well, the reason I didn't continue, and I had a lot of fun doing that. I enjoyed it immensely. Is that I thought being in show business after I was in it 4 or 5 years on the network, I thought being in show business was a very risky proposition. You're working one day and you're out of work the next. And I saw a lot of my pals in those days lose a show or lose a movie or lose a part, and they got no work, they didn't know where to go, and they had absolutely no money and nothing else to fall back on. And I said, I can't do that. As much as I enjoyed it, I just can't do that with my life. It's too scary. And so eventually that's how I got in the real estate business and out of show business. But I did enjoy it.
Great. Now, do you have any aspirations of going back into it?
This is it today.
I love it. Now, I also know that it's your lifestyle. You are a great athlete, but this has been a part of your life since you were very young. How much has the activities and the sports contributed to the success of business?
Well, that's a personal thing, Perry, but for me it was the biggest, it's just as big a contributor as anything else I've done. I've always been interested since I was a little kid in athletics and playing ball and doing sports and going surfing and all that kind of stuff. And I've been doing that all my life, and it just wouldn't be a part of my life if I didn't do those things and continue to do those things. And I think it's helped me in terms of leveling out my
Now, your first book that you wrote is called Win the Food Fight.
Well, ever since I got out of school, I've always been more importantly, when I got out of school and there was no organized athletics, I became more and more interested in health and nutrition and exercise and activity. And a lot of my pals were ball players or Olympians or a few All-Americans and so on. And I'd hang out with those people, and I still do. And that's all they ever talk about. That's all they ever think about is their health, their routine, their nutrition, their exercise. And it's always been something that was important to me. And I looked around and I thought, wow, this country is really badly overweight. And I think it's like 65% are way, way overweight. And I researched it for about 2.5 years and looked and studied and did everything, talked to everyone I could. And I came up with this idea for a book, and I wrote it, and it got published, and it did pretty well.
And it was received well by people that, were saying, well, this is just a businessman.
No, it was received well by everyone except the critics, who mostly were doctors. USA Today, I remember, I think it was the doctor who reviewed the book, just panned it. And this was 13 years ago, saying, how can this person, who's never had any medical training, talk about health and nutrition? Well, of course, it's a joke, and we now know that you do listen to the Jane Fondas and the Susan Summers and whoever. They don't need medical training to understand what's healthy and what's important, what's good. My pal Clint Eastwood probably knows more about exercise, health, and supplements than any human being I've ever met. He's an actor, and a real great actor. But he's made his whole life work, basically, understanding and trying to study that issue alone. So I think Clint's smarter on that issue than anyone I've ever talked to.
We're going to pick up that. You said my pal Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, okay. My pal Clint Eastwood, I think, knows more about supplements, Perry, than anyone I've ever talked to, any doctor, anyone. He's almost made a lifetime study of trying to understand supplements. This is not quackery I'm talking about. This is the real stuff. And I believe Clint knows more about that issue and that part of health than almost anyone I've ever talked to. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't trained as a doctor. But you take a look at Clint, and you look how strong he is and how good he is and how great he's doing. I mean, it speaks for itself.
How much do you contribute your healthy lifestyle with all of your sports and nutrition to the success of the business?
Well, I'm not sure how much it's contributed. All I know is it's something I never wanted to give up. I would say it's certainly balanced my life in terms of stress. It's the greatest stress reliever in the world. And there are times when I've been pretty stressed, and then I go work out or I take a run or a bike ride or whatever. And it's enormously important, and it's amazing what it's done. So it's kept my head fairly well straight, and I think it's been a great part of any success I might have achieved.
Right, we've been out before another plane comes out. I have one.
Stop it.
Sam, in one of your golden rules, you talk about the importance of giving back. And it seems to me that your company does that by purchasing properties that are disheveled, and you restore them, you give them back to community. That must be very satisfying.
Well, it is, Barry. People do it in different ways. They go to work for the Red Cross, or they take care of elderly folks or whatever. We've done it kind of differently. We've taken old, decaying, really kind of lousy properties, and we brought them back to life and regenerated the neighborhood and regenerated the area, and done things, especially in Phoenix, which we're very, very proud of, and which have had an enormous impact on the community, on the surrounding properties, and on people who really now can enjoy things that they weren't able to enjoy before. And it keeps a lot of, in our case, a lot of blight and a lot of rundown neighborhoods away. And that's something we've done for a long, long time, and from an economic standpoint, it's been sensational.
And you started the water concept, didn't you, in Phoenix? It kind of
Well, when we got there in 1964, there weren't many, it was a lot smaller than it is now, and I never saw a property anywhere in Phoenix in those days that had a fountain or a flower, well, a few flowers maybe, awnings, umbrellas. And when we started all this nonsense all those years ago, every time I had a chance, I'd put water somewhere, a fountain somewhere, an awning somewhere, a tree, and any planting, flowers. And of course, now, I think a number of developers in Arizona have copied that, and it's great because it brings a whole different attitude and a whole different mindset to a place like Phoenix, Arizona, which is kind of thought of as the desert. No longer.
That's great. That must be very satisfying to have employees that have been with you for years.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a fellow by the name of Chuck Carlise who's been with me for 38 years, and I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for him. I mean, he's the real brains. A number of my senior employees have been with me more than 25 years. I mean, when you're running a company, bench strength is the whole deal. And I want people around me who are a lot smarter than I am, because otherwise I couldn't cut it.
Is that loud there?
No, we don't have to redo it.
Okay. Sam, what do you consider your greatest success?
Oh, clearly, Perry, it's the family. That's clearly my greatest success. I mean, that to me is everything. Everything else pales by comparison. My health is important to me, and we've been lucky enough to make a few bucks and live the way we wanted to live.
How do you balance family life with your successful business?
I've never been consumed by business. A lot of my contemporaries are. A lot of my contemporaries made a lot of money, and they end up giving, say, $10 million to a new wing at the UCLA hospital, and then they end up being a tenant of that wing for the rest of their life, and that's just not my deal. It's just a question of what was important to me, and spending time with the family and taking care of my health were the priorities.
And what are some of those activities that you do as a family?
Oh, as a family? Oh, we've been skiing forever and ever and ever, and surfing and whitewater kayaking and windsurfing, and I've got 3 wonderful kids and 2 boys who are dynamite world-class athletes in about 3 different sports, so we kind of do all that sort of stuff.
Again.
Yeah.
Do you want to also mention Courtney and Special Olympics?
No, I don't, unless you want to bring it up. No.
Um,
That guy flying around,
There's
what a
this
big
again.
dread.
what is the most important piece of advice that you would give an aspiring entrepreneur today?
I think probably, Perry, the most important thing I could tell anyone is to do it right now. And I can't emphasize that enough. I'd like to use different language, but I won't. It is so important. Do it now. That's the single biggest piece of advice I could give to everyone.
And then what is the single most important attribute in others that you look for in business?
Oh, that's simple. For me, it's credibility. Deliver more than you promise. Be credible. If you say you're going to do it, do it. Credibility is just vital for me in talking with other people, in doing business with other people, in employing other people.
If you were talking to someone today, particularly in this economics that we're facing, a lot of white-collar people who are in the unemployment line as you were at one point, what would you say to them now to give them encouragement?
They obviously, since they're in the unemployment line, they were employed, and that means that they were successful at doing something, or possibly successful at doing something. So they have to have a lot of confidence in themselves, and they just have to be persistent, persistent, persistent. If they can end up doing something they really love, then they'll be really successful. But it's tough. It's always tough. It was tough when I was growing up. It's going to be tough when my kids finally get to my age. It's always the same, Perry. It's going to always be tough. You have to be persistent. You just have to dog it out and go for it, because the alternative is lousy.
Exactly. There was one part that I didn't cover that I wanted to go back to a little bit, and because I'm going to cover a lot of the particular real estate developments through voiceovers, but Sam, you have obviously a very strong physical life, very strong mind. What about a spiritual side of filling out the Trinity?
Well, Perry, if you just look over my shoulder, that's where I'm coming from. If you want to call that spiritual or whatever you want to call it. Every time I look at a sunset, or I look at the ocean, or I look at the mountains, for me, that's a religious experience, or whatever you want to call it. And it's always been that way since I've been a little boy. I just loved sitting on the beach and looking at the water and the ocean and the waves and the heavens and the stars. I don't know how that fits in with what people are thinking or saying, but for me, the things of nature are vitally important. I believe in that sort of nature way, and if you want to call that spirituality or religiosity or whatever you want to call it, that's where I'm coming from.
That's great. Now, what piece of advice, you have a grandson, brand new, coming on strong in life, what piece of advice would you like to say to him?
I would say to my grandson, choose your parents well, and he really has.
Aw, that's great. Thank you. We got it. We got it covered. Now, Sam, you really didn't get started in business until you were 33, newly married, and standing in the unemployment line. Now, how did you turn it around? Should I do another one there, quick cover? Sam, you were 33 years old, newly married, and in the unemployment line. How did you turn it around? Okay. What do you think is the biggest inhibitor to success? Okay. I love this in your book, The 10 Commandments. You talked about taking the time to imagine, to think, to form images, and to let your imagination run wild. How often do you daydream?
Now, you are looking down at your paper. Is that
That's okay, yeah. I mean, are you, well, you're not seeing my paper, are you?
No.
That's right, I forgot. So I'll do that last, it was only the last one I did that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sam, in your book, The 10 Commandments, you talked about the importance of daydreaming, letting your imagination run wild. How often in your life do you do that? Okay, all right. Oh, yeah. You have attributed some of your success to listening to your stomach. Give me an example of a deal that went south because you didn't listen to your stomach. Oh, yeah. How much do you think that your healthy lifestyle, nutrition, exercise has played in the success of your business? Um, oh, yeah. I was surprised to learn that in your earlier career you were involved in the entertainment business, hosting game shows and whatnot. Why did you decide not to continue? Right?
What game shows did he host?
He did one called 7 Keys for 4 years. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and this is the last one. Okay. How are
Fix
you?
your hair real quick.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's going across your mouth. Perfect.
Thanks. How do you balance a successful family life with a successful career? Okay, that's covered. And that's
Speak.
Hi, everyone. I'm Perry Jones. Now, imagine the feeling of Is that really?
Speak.
Let's get rid of this. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Perry Jones. Now, imagine the desperation of standing in the unemployment line, 33 years old, newly married, mounting bills, and not a job prospect in sight. Well, this is the story of Sam Grossman, who turned that reality into his dream of owning a private jet, owning 5 homes all across the world. Blah, blah. Can't do that.